Good afternoon to you all.
Hello, Marco.
Hi.
Aloha.
Sunny day here in Costa Rica.
Oh, yay, Marco. Toshi, are you on a carousel? I can't quite tell. Ah, looks fun.
Artist console room.
Nice.
Hey, boys and girls.
Aloha.
Nice to see all your familiar faces.
So weird when you really go out in public and you're like, oh no, is it safe?
Like, I've only seen your faces like 3 times a week for the last 2 months, but
Maybe we should wear masks to the conference.
Exactly.
Yeah, you might recognize people better that way.
Only by
I
their eyes.
I'm starting to recognize people by the type of mask they have on now. So.
Okay, so for any of you who've been to star parties, especially the big regional star parties, you know that when you go out and you're observing with people for hours in the pitch darkness, you would start to recognize everybody by their voices, right?
Mhm.
So the next day you all get up for breakfast and you don't recognize anybody's faces. So I always say, okay, everybody close your eyes and start talking. Okay, now I know you're Fred from yeah. Anybody ever have that happen?
Mhm.
Also the
Great.
clothes, because if you see people at star parties and it's cold, they're all bundled up.
all right. Well, we're gonna have a fairly rollicking time tonight anyway. This is a decidedly more laid back session. This is a lot more of direct questions and things like that. Got a lot to go over. So welcome everybody to the eConference special session. This is Home Studio and Streaming Essentials. And we are going to go over tonight some things that for some of you may be very familiar. For others of you, this is the first time you've ever really kind of delved into the idea of creating content, especially video content at home. And this is sort of to get you on the right foot. So this is useful for home studios if you know you're going to be at home for a while, or you're going to be doing a lot of your work from home. A lot of this will port over well to your domes when you're able to get back into them. And then, of course, there's a lot of just kind of understanding vocabulary and definitions and things that once you start to want to move up and try out new things in streaming and content creation, there's always that learning curve. And so tonight we're going to try to flatten the learning curve. We've been trying to flatten the curve elsewhere, so we'll flatten the learning curve here. And so, as always, chat, participant window, hand raises, interrupting me, all of that's going to be fine today. Let me know if there's at any point something you want to talk about. This really is sort of because we have a PowerPoint and links and the YouTube happening simultaneously. The ability to start and stop and go off on tangents is a good thing here. So we'll get this done, of course, well before the hospitality suite. It's also happening tonight. It's going to be a good hospitality suite, let me tell you. So trivia at 9 o'clock. You wanna be part of that. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and we're going to start off real easy. This is Home Studio and Streaming Essentials. And of course, you're probably quite familiar with the bars and tones and you know, sort of the old way of TV. This is something that 5 or 10 years ago, the idea of people streaming from their homes was an impossibility. Number one, you needed really great internet. Most of the equipment was very, very expensive. And there's a learning curve on all of this. But more importantly, there wasn't really an audience. We stream now to all sorts of different platforms. You can stream people playing video games. People stream painting. And there's YouTube videos where people unbox toys. and they get millions of views, and they do make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It's ridiculous. But because this has become much more democratic, things have gotten cheaper, the access to these sorts of technologies has gotten much more open. Now we're at a time where most of our facilities have been closed now for probably 2 months at this point, and we've shifted almost everything we do in a dome into the online sector. And what we hear over and over again is when we start going back into our domes, when we begin the process of sort of this new normal, a lot of that online content production isn't going to go away. In many cases, it's growing our audiences at a time where that's more necessary than ever. So what we're going to go over tonight, just a few basics in our syllabus. Basic introduction like we've done now, a little bit about designing your studio, which sounds way more complicated than it actually is. And then we'll get into things like, if you wanted to start from scratch, what do you want for a computer? What do you need for audio? What do you need for video? What do you need for lighting? And then finally at the end, how to stream out. And these, in a lot of ways, most of us are quite familiar with. You've been using, whether it's Facebook Live or YouTube or Zoom, all of those are going to be fairly familiar to us. There are certain streaming platforms that are a little bit more precise in who they work with, or they offer tools that you may not need now, but possibly could use in the future. So with that, for those of you who have just come in the room, welcome, welcome. This is the interrupt mic and put stuff in the group chat sort of session. So if at any point you hear something, see something that you want to know more about or you want defined, let me know. We're going to do that immediately. So we're going to have a kind of fun time tonight. So we'll start off with the basics of studio design. And one of the things that I'm going to do tonight is kind of give you a little bit behind the scenes of how my home studio has come together. And it's kind of pretentious sounding. It's not really a home studio. It's my desk and a couple of monitors and just kind of things that have accumulated over the years of running planetariums and being part of the planetarium industry. We are, for better or worse, kind of a hoarding group of people. And we kind of collect stuff. And it's when we get to repurpose that stuff into something new and useful that we get really excited. We don't have to go back in time to the baby food jars, but it is simply an extension of taking something that really has no place in a planetarium and making it into something completely useful. So we'll get an idea of sort of how I've kind of put my very ad hoc studio together and how you can utilize what you've got at home and in your domes to do that as well. So basics, slacks, SLACS. You want to worry about space. You want to worry about your lighting. You want to worry about your access, your comfort, and your sound. Some of these are very, very straightforward. Others we'll get into a little bit more detail. But the biggest one, the most important one, is find a space that is yours. Whether that's at home or in the dome, having a space that you can work in is by far the most important key in building a studio. You're going to have equipment, whether it's a camera or lights or a computer or monitors or a drawn out storyboard in front of you. And you want to have space that you can use that isn't shared with, let's say, other people, other endeavors, things of that sort. So if you've got, a space in your home where you can set aside, I don't know, 70, 80 square feet, 7 by 10 or 8 by 10 or something, a desk and then some area behind you, now you've got the space to maneuver. Now, of course, in some cases, you're on the island in your kitchen or you're on your kitchen table and there's only so much space that you've got. Then you start thinking up or to the side or below. This is really a chance to look at your space and see in its own uniqueness how it works for you. So I've got a 2-bedroom apartment here in Pennsylvania. I've got a 5-year-old, so that's a big thing. And that means that every other week I've got to worry about a 60-pound linebacker running through the house, hitting green screens or knocking over lights or things like that. And really it's trying to make things as self-contained as possible. So we're gonna try some fun stuff today. And one of the fun hacks we're going to show later is how to use your cell phone as a webcam. In this case, though, I'm going to use my my cell phone as an additional camera. So let's start that. Okay. Oh, this is going to work. And if I stop sharing my screen, this is where things get really funny. All right. Advanced, connect second camera. Here we go. No, not yet. Switch the camera one more time. Oh, look at that. Unbelievable. So this is now my cell phone. So there it is. And then there's the camera. So now things are working the way that I expected them to. So I'm going to get up for a second and then yell at my microphone. But you can see I have my desk and a little side desk and a bunch of monitors. That's kind of my thing. So I have as many monitors as I could possibly put together. I have my main web camera. I have a ring light that we're going to talk about in a little bit. I've got some lighting just for tonight. And then I have my green screen. So there's the green screen. Let's talk about that. And then, of course, everything behind it, just the actual apartment. Oh, and there's someone playing Animal Crossing. Hey, look at that. So you can kind of sense this isn't a huge area. It's just trying to maximize that space as much as possible. I'm using a single laptop to run it all. It is fairly powerful, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And so to not freak you all out by the moving camera here, let's see if we can, we'll go back and put that share back where it needs to be. All right, boom. Okay, we're back. So now you should be seeing basics of studio design again, and you can see me on there. Perfect. All right. I'm surprised that went as smoothly as it did. So that's sort of my space. It's small, but I've tried to make it work as well as I can. I need more, and Jason, you're very welcome for wearing pants. I wanted to make sure I did that for everybody. Thanks, Patty. I told you this was going to be a little odd. One of my issues is that I have a large window in the kitchen and a very large sliding glass door in the living room, and both of them face south, which means that I receive a lot of direct sunlight during the day. It really, really dumps light into the house. And that means that if I'm usually on a call, one side of my face is usually going to be quite hot, a lot of light, and then the other side of the face a little bit less. So for me, I have to focus on using more artificial lighting than I might use natural lighting. You'd never want to have your window behind you because then you're in silhouette. If you are in front of a window, especially one that faces north or northwest here in the northern hemisphere, south or southeast in the southern hemisphere, where you're going to get a lot of indirect lighting, that may be more than enough for daytime streaming. You're going to look nice. You're going to have a fairly consistent light across your face, and that gives you the opportunity to kind of look at your own place and say, well, I've got some good natural lighting. I'd like to utilize that, or I'm in a place where I can't control my lighting at all, and maybe artificial lighting is more of what we're going to need. We're going to go over that a little bit later in the session. They're relatively cheap. All of the lighting that you saw there, the two big umbrella ones, and then the ring light, total were about $60. You can get ones that are $600, but altogether $60 to be able to get rid of a lot of the lighting issues that are here. Checking. Okay, good. Access. This is a real big one. You need some place that you can get to and use as often as possible. This is really the most important part of all is have it be someplace that you don't have to worry that you're going to be prohibited from using it. If you're at home with kids and you happen to be lucky enough to have your own home office, then your access is very, very high. They're probably not going to go into that room. If you need to share a kitchen table with 6 people, that might be a problem. And again, anything that you can utilize, anything that you can create from is better than nothing. And in this case, you want to take that into consideration. When you start thinking about dome studios, then you've got an entirely different story. Your access is entirely based on whether or not they're letting you in the building at that point. And once you are, what's the access to that during the day? What's the access to it during show presentations, for example? If you happen to be working from an office that's right off the planetarium, you're not going to be able to do audio production if someone is giving a presentation or if there's a movie that's being shown in the dome, as opposed to if you're on the other side of campus, for example, where your office is completely independent from the planetarium or somewhere else in the building. So take that into consideration if you're going to take the time and effort to set up a studio. You want to have good access to it. And then there's comfort. It needs to be someplace that's comfortable for you. If you are in a place where the only chair that's available to you is a backless bar stool, you're probably not going to be as comfortable as a studio where you have access to like a big plush executive chair. You want to be able to relax when you're doing this sort of production. It depends on sort of, if you're a singer, for example, you're almost never going to be singing sitting down. If you do a lot of narration or a lot of voiceover, you're going to want to be standing up most of the time so that you have better airflow through your respiratory system, that you sound better. So you'd want to have a place that's comfortable for you to sit and stand in. And if it's a place where you're doing a lot of work on the computer, if you're, say a single person who wants to do a more technologically advanced presentation, I see him in the room. I've seen some of the work he's done, but Scott Mitchell from California has this great setup where there's the overlay for Orange Coast College's website and pictures and backgrounds and all of these things that require him to be at the computer controlling it. So if you're going to have to be at the computer controlling it, you might as well be as comfortable as possible. I don't necessarily think that means a lazy boy, but to each their own. Whatever you want to do, whatever is comfortable, whatever allows you to do your best work. Who are we to judge at this point? So keep comfort in mind. It's a very, very, very good thing. And then finally is sound. This is less of an issue if you are simply creating content for the web. If you want to narrate shows in the future, you might want to take into account sort of the size of your room, the reverberation in your room. So if you're in a very heavily carpeted and furnitured area, sound tends to dampen. There's a lot of things to hit. You don't get a lot of echoes. If you're in a cavernous garage, that's going to have a very different audio environment, very different sound that you might need some foam egg crates for, or you might need something around the microphone so that you don't get a lot of reverberations or outside noise. One of the downsides of where I am is that I'm next to a major highway. And so I need to close all of the doors, all of the screens, all of the blinds. And I still hear quite a bit when the semis air brake. It's, it can be a problem. You can mitigate that, but you want to be aware of it going in. And as long as you've got all of these sorts of things kind of banding about, this is where I need to be, take that into consideration. Now you've got your basic studio and you're good to go. So any questions on that before we move forward? And people are already adding things to their Amazon carts. Fantastic. Yeah, $20 ring lights are the way to go. So we'll move on after basics of studio design. Let's talk about computers. This is a question we've gotten a couple of times on Dome Dialogues. I know it's a question that comes up quite a bit. If I wanted to buy a new computer right now, and I wanted to do a lot of streaming, I want to work in Stellarium, or I want to use Open Broadcaster, or maybe I'm a little bit more masochistic. I want to try open space or something. Like I want to try something big. What do I do? Okay, this is a good place to start. We got 5 major things you want to focus on when you're looking at a new computer. What's the design and speed of your processor? What's the graphics situation? Is it an integrated graphics, something that's on the processor? This would be like Intel, HT graphics, something. How much memory, random access, the RAM does it have? How much storage is available? And after a while, you'll figure this might be the biggest problem of all. How many things can I input into the computer? And then how many things can I output from the computer? And while there's no real cut and dry, this is what you need to buy and everything else is terrible. A good rule of thumb for all of these is the newer and more expensive it is, the better it's going to be for streaming. That's kind of not the best news for everybody, but there's certainly ways to get around spending thousands and thousands of dollars on a computer. If you're in the market for a computer, you're probably going to be spending certainly several $100s, probably about $1,000 if you want a system that's going to work for a long period of time and that can kind of grow with you. So go through there. For processors, the kind of standards now are the Intel i series. You'll see i5, i7, i9. Processing speed 10 years ago was the end all be all. Processors ran everything. And as time has gone on, the processors have become more and more efficient. And in some cases, a lot of the processing power that we use for streaming, for video and audio, has moved away from the processor itself and onto graphics cards, especially in desktop computers. That doesn't mean you want to skimp out on a processor. If you find a computer that has a Celeron processor or some sort of mobile processor that doesn't match one of the i series, it's not an i3 or an i5 or an i7, don't do it. Not a good place to go. You're going to run into a bottleneck very quickly, where as you're trying to create all of this content together, now you need the processing power to output it. And that's where your processor comes in. The faster the processor you have, the faster the computer is going to run, the better things are going to be. In most cases, if you have an i5 or an i7 processor in a computer, you're in pretty good shape. You want to make sure it has 4, in some cases 8 cores if it's a little bit more expensive. But if it says quad core i5, which is probably going to be a pretty average processor, you're going to be in good shape. That's the baseline to work from. For graphics, what you want more than anything is what we would call a discrete card. That means that the memory available to the graphics processor is devoted to graphics and graphics alone. That means that if this is a desktop computer, instead of plugging into the regular motherboard, you're plugging into a video card that's going to be installed elsewhere on the computer. Both NVIDIA and AMD, the two major graphics card companies, produce very, very good graphics cards. If you're utilizing a laptop, you're more than likely going to find that the NVIDIA cards are better because they tend to run a little bit cooler. And because they run cooler, larger cards and more powerful cards can be put into a computer of similar price as an AMD. You want at least 2 gigs of this video memory. I'm currently using a graphics card. It's the NVIDIA GTX series. It's what's called a 1660. It's about 2 generations old. Has 6 gigabytes of this video memory, It's about average nowadays for one of these cards, and works fine. For what I do, the Zooms and the streaming and the things like that, works great. Most gaming laptops today will have a more powerful card, and you'll be great. If you kind of want to make things easier on yourself, gaming systems will likely have the specifications that you need to be able to run anything that you might run across now in sort of the planetarium world. If all you're ever going to use is Stellarium and Zoom, of course, your specifications can be a lot lower. If you'd like to utilize the highest ends of Worldwide Telescope, if you really want to utilize open space, if you have a UniView license and you want to utilize that on a laptop, you're going to need a much more powerful graphics card. That's really where the processing power is going to be concentrated nowadays. So the better graphics card that you can find, the better off that you're going to be. In terms of memory, this one's really simple. The more you have, the better. 16 gigabytes is a good place to start. It's more than enough memory to run the 3 or 4 programs you're likely to have open at once, Zoom or OBS, and then whatever it is that you're streaming. But a few years ago, upgrading computer RAM was very expensive. Nowadays, you can double the RAM in your computer for about $100. I could jump from 16 to 32 gigabytes for about $100. 2 or 3 years ago, that was about a $400 investment. So it's one of those things where if you have an older computer that seems to work really well, if you're able to add more memory to it, much more the case if this is a Windows computer than if it's a Mac, but there are still cases in which you can do that. The more memory you can put in your computer, the better. That just gives more headroom for you to utilize when you're processing all of this together. And because this memory is so much faster than your hard drive, and even in some cases the processor itself, the more that you can put into this memory, the faster the system's going to work and the more stable it's going to be. Storage, you would want a solid state drive. It used to be you had the spinning magnetic hard drives. Those have thankfully almost completely left the market. Solid state is very, very fast. There are no moving parts. A solid state drive means that you can access files quicker. And when you are processing all of these files, the faster that you can access them, the better. You don't need a huge solid state drive. If you have one that's large enough to run your operating system, and then the files that you need, whatever programs you have, say if you want to use Photoshop and add a few other things, usually right about 256 gigabytes is more than enough. And then you can add memory either externally or, in the case of both laptops and desktops, internally as well. And however much memory you need. If you do a lot of video work, you might need terabytes. If you give a couple of Stellarium talks a week and you surf the web, 256 gigabytes of solid state drive is probably more than enough, and you'll be in great shape. And then finally, on inputs and outputs, the faster the inputs, the better. We've moved through the states of different USB ports. We're now up to USB 3 and USB-C. You're used to USB-C if you have any of the new Android-based phones. It's the connector that you don't have to worry about whether it's up or down. It's the same on either side. USB-C is faster than USB 3. Thunderbolt, which you find on almost all Mac systems and some Windows systems, is even faster. So if you're going to be connecting cameras and capture cards, and you have mice and lights and microphones and mixers and interfaces, all the things we're going to talk about, you want these very, very fast ports available to you, simply because that way you can put more into the computer, and then the computer can output more for you. That said, go to Dell, HP, even Mac Pro, for example. You're going to find these levels of specifications sort of as the standard, and it's really a matter of how much you're able to spend, how much is the facility, the institution, the school willing to invest for you. And if you've already got a system at home, where in this system can I upgrade? Memory really is the key. And if you're looking for something new, focus on the graphics power. That's going to be the way to go. And so looking there, Mike Murray mentions Samsung's making a 1 terabyte solid state drive for $160. Yeah, the prices on computer equipment have come down so much over the past few years that now the access to what would have been $500 or $1,000 just a few years ago is now much more reasonable. We're not going to say it's cheap. $1,000 computer is not cheap. But it is much more accessible than a $4,000 one, for example. And that way you have access to the sorts of speeds and capabilities that are going to make your life a little easier. And Patty mentioned something very important. The shortages of COVID have been toilet paper and webcams. Webcam prices have skyrocketed. There are almost no places on the internet right now where you can get a brand name webcam for less than like $150 or $200. It's quite ridiculous. So got through the computing. Any questions on that before we move on to the audio? So the basics, if you're in the market, you're looking for something that's going to work. All right, so let's talk audio. And this one, we've got 3 major points to discuss. Microphones, mixers, and audio interfaces, basically how our microphones get into the computers, and the very overlooked aspect of the headphone. It's okay to use your old Apple iPod headphones if you want to, but they're not very comfortable, and honestly, like, you can spend $30 on headphones. It's the best investment you've made out of all of this, especially if you're sitting in front of a computer all day, listening to people drone on about, home studios and streaming essentials. Good headphones make that a little bit easier. So what I decided to do with this is, instead of walking you through all of the nitty gritty of microphones and mixers and all that, wanted to take you out into the marketplace. And so we're gonna go ahead and share something different here. I primarily will get my electronics equipment from B&H Photo and Video. They're based out of New York. They're a fantastic company to work with. And I think very important for this group because they're educational, nonprofit, and government side. They've got a department devoted to just education, nonprofit, and government sales. Oftentimes would be 20 to 30% less than the prices they'd show on the website. And those prices were already pretty good. So it's one of the very important. They're a big enough vendor where in most cases, colleges and schools will already have them as an approved vendor. That makes your life a lot easier if you're trying to procure things. So what I wanted to do was simply go through the really popular stuff that, if you're looking to buy, these websites make things very, very easy for us to kind of go through and see what's available and what isn't. So for what we're looking at today, you'll see they've got a list of microphones, recording and live sound, wireless, USB, some for mobile, some for DSLR cameras. And when you run into these different types of microphones, we also find that you might run into things like dynamic and condenser and ribbon. And what does all of this mean? And what does cardioid mean? And do I want an omnidirectional or do I want polar pattern? And it just it's a lot of stuff to take in when really all you want is a microphone that sounds good. And so if you want to record audio, first things first, you can use the microphone in your computer. It's probably not very good. If you want to move away from that, we've got some straightforward ways of doing so. The easiest way of getting better audio recording quality for your computer would be through a USB microphone. USB microphones are exactly what they sound like. It is a microphone with a USB cord. It attaches directly to your computer. You don't need any sort of external mixer. You don't need an interface. The computer reads it, and now it's a new audio input for you. My current audio setup is a USB mic that was that's created by a company called Rode. It's known as the NT USB. It's a couple of years old. It's a really, really nice microphone. Great sound quality. It's what we call a condenser mic. And that means that the inside of your microphone, the way that it translates your sound waves into electricity and then transmits that to a mixer or computer, condensers tend to have a wider range so that you have you can do louder and softer tones. They tend to be a little bit warmer. Condenser mics would be sort of the standard for radio or for voiceover. A dynamic mic does not need any sort of power to run. If any of you have given a presentation either at like at a park or with a PA or something, it's like the old Shure mics. It's the aluminum grate. You plug it into an XLR cable, it's plugged into somewhere else, and you hold it and you're good to go. They are excellent for live sound, a little less so if you're trying to do this sort of narration or voiceover. They are generally handheld. We have options where you could use a lapel, what would be known as a lavalier mic. Those are useful, but when you're using the level of microphones, even here on some of the USB ones, there are some fairly expensive options, you know, $200 or $300. There are also USB mics that can run $20 or $30 that sound good, not great, but much better than what you might have in your computer already. Most of those are going to be standalone. They're not going to be ones that you would be able to clip on. While the lavalier mics are good, most of the time, if you're at a computer, if you're working in sort of this environment, having a dedicated standalone mic is much preferred. That's going to give you a considerably better sound quality. So some of the ones that we've scrolled past here are the Blue Yetis. These are extremely popular amongst podcasters. Very, very easy to use. Again, this is plug and play, and Windows and Mac computers both can read them without any sort of problems. In many cases, you don't even have to download a driver. It just shows up magically in your Zoom or in your Audacity or whatever program that you're utilizing. And so you've got this wide array of options. You'll see things like, let's see, your ability, what your resolution capture is. For what you're worrying about, that don't even worry about it. They're all good. Especially the above $50 price point. Really what you want to do is read reviews. There are very few groups of people that are snobbier than audiophiles. And so people who care about audio really care about it. And especially on a site like B&H, the reviews tend to be very, very detailed. So if you have a use case, you want to record music, then some of these mics are much better for music than they would be for voice. And in some cases, you can find a great vocal mic that might be very inexpensive compared to another choice. So instead of you spending $300 on a mic, you might be able to spend $40 and get exactly what you need for your needs. So there's the NT USB. This is the one that I use. And you can see there's the Blue Snowball and the Blue Yeti. The Blue Snowball at $70, about as good a purchase as you can make. If you need anything more than what a Blue Snowball can provide you, you probably will know, and then you can go and seek that out. But as a good starter, the Snowballs and the Yetis are both excellent kind of forays into USB microphones. So what we're going to do, and just to make sure that everybody knows, all of the links that we have are going to be included both in the PowerPoint and in the archived notes for this, so that everything we're talking about, you're going to have access to. Just take notes and ask questions and do things like that. We'll make sure that you have access to all of this information moving forward. And so this is the easy way. If you want a microphone that works and it's just you at home, a USB mic is a very good place to start. It's a really, really solid choice. However, some of you may run into situations where you may want to record more than one microphone at a time. And while you can buy multiple USB microphones, that's not usually the best case. So what we would have in that situation is the need for a mixer, which we're all familiar with working in the domes, or an audio interface, which would essentially be a little box that connects to your computer that we can connect inputs to, and that the computer can then read the signals from. So we'll move over to recording mixers. This is probably one of the cheaper parts of audio interfaces. And you can see that there is a number of different options here: analog and digital. Don't go near digital. The prices will scare you, and then you'd want to turn away. Analog ones, the ones where I have a microphone cable and I plugged it in, and I plugged it into a mic, and that's it. Real simple. As long as it has a USB output, you can use this to control the audio on your computer. Your computer will see the mixer as one output. So you might be able to connect 8 microphones, but it's only going to see one output. So all of the level controls, all of the equalization, all of the audio work is going to be done on the mixer itself before you send it to your computer. So for example, you can see here a 10 input mixer from Yamaha, about $200. The Behringer company, which makes pretty good quality audio equipment at really inexpensive prices. This one is 12 inputs if you think you need 12 inputs worth of space. Or we could go and get really small. Maybe what you want is a microphone and maybe some sort of outside audio player, and you have one microphone input and a couple of these stereo outputs. And that, with a USB cable, which we can see here on the back, there's the USB connector, that connects to your computer, and whatever you connect to this mixer now can be read by your computer. Very important. Thanks, Justin. The difference here when you get to mixers is that they need to provide power to some microphones. And so one of the things you might see if you're looking at non-USB microphones is the need for something called phantom power. If you've been around audio in the planetarium enough, you've probably run into phantom power before, but it runs 48 volts of power through the cable, and that's what allows a condenser mic to work. So if there's a condenser mic, it needs phantom power. If it's a dynamic mic, one of the standard handhelds, it does not need that power. And the mixers should be able to provide that power through the cabling. So you can see here in the picture on this Xenix USB mixer, there's a big orange button that says Phantom. You press that, and now the microphone is going to work because the power is being sent through the cabling. So this is bare bones. This is as simple as it gets, but it's still far more powerful than anything else you might have had access to, 10 or 15 years ago, because this is simply a USB cable, one cable into your computer, and now you have access to all of these inputs that you wouldn't have had access to before. But in some cases, this might be overkill. There is a school of thought that says a mixer like this is great, and that the processing power for the audio should be on the computer itself. The other school of thought says that we should process outside of the computer and use an audio interface. So we're looking here, John. Yeah. So a very important part for what we're talking about here. All of these audio interfaces have the ability to utilize XLR, which is the larger three-pronged cables, and then they have the round jacks, the ones that we're familiar with. Those are going to be 1/4 of an inch in diameter. They can take both unbalanced, which would be sort of like shorter speaker and guitar cables, and balanced cables, ones where there's an additional shielding that allows you to run much longer lines. When you're utilizing your equipment, most of the time the equipment that you could connect to a mixer or to an audio interface will tell you this is going to use a balanced output or an unbalanced output, or very clearly 2 big microphone outputs. And as long as you can connect those two, you're usually in pretty good shape. These are fairly smart pieces of technology. It's difficult to blow them up nowadays. Very, very positive thing. Much more so when you have these audio interfaces. So let me scoot over for a second, pull one out from the storage area. All right. So I have, and you'll see this in the corner. I'll show it in the screen. This little red box is from a company called Focusrite. They make a series of audio interfaces that connect directly to your computer. And a lot of the audio processing happens here rather than on my laptop, which means that if I connect a microphone, and in this case, I could put a guitar or a bass. I could also input a keyboard, or I could have another microphone. I have the ability to check their gain. I can put monitors here that allow me to hear it both in my headphones and elsewhere. Allows me to connect to the computer so that I can control it through MIDI, MIDI, one of the older school technologies of audio production. And these, while a little bit more expensive than most mixers, can give you just as many inputs. So you can see here, Focusrite has 2 in and 2 out. It's USB. You have 2 inputs that allow you to put in 2 microphones and then control over all of that, about $160, $170. There are some that are much, much smaller. And there are some interfaces that might give you the ability to have, well, I'll go down here a little bit further. Some of these are 12 or 16 inputs if you were to so desire that many. So if you do podcasts and you want to do something where you have a lot of guests, you want to have multiple inputs, this would be a great way of connecting to the computer. What an audio interface or a mixer gives you versus a USB microphone is the ability to choose whatever microphone you want. Whether you want to use a $10 microphone or a $10,000 microphone, now you have the ability to pick and choose as precisely as you want to use microphones that may already be in stock with you. Most planetariums probably have a few microphones lying around that can immediately be repurposed for recording because you have interfaces or mixers that can connect to them easily. If it's a microphone that was made in the last 50 years, it's going to be able to interface in most cases with either the digital or the analog versions of these mixers. Either way, their output is through USB. In some cases, it might be Thunderbolt. If you have an older M audio, you go back 5 or 10 years and you get to like Firewire, which was a thing. Firewire, the new connector that after a while nobody really used, and we're now onto USB-C and Thunderbolt. Your computer will see them both the same. And here you have the ability to control individual inputs, individual outputs. This is quite small. It might be 7 inches, 7 by 4 inches. Mixer a little bit bigger, and then all of the connectors that go with it. But if you want to have a little bit more control over your audio, this is a great opportunity to do so. And then while we're here, we'll quickly look at the microphones page. When we're looking at recording and live sound, you'll see under recording, the diaphragm, the size of the transducer that's in your microphone. The larger that diaphragm, usually the more expensive a microphone is and the better sounding it is. There are microphones that you can buy, primarily ribbon microphones, that can cost thousands of dollars and that you cannot get closer than like 4 or 6 inches from, because the pressure from your breath can break the ribbon and conversely make the microphone useless. But their sound is so pristine and so perfect that some recording artists or some recording studios might want that, and they're willing to pay for it. You don't have to. There's no reason for us to ever go that far. Again, find a price point that you think works for you, and then go and explore those reviews. And so we can get great condenser microphones for voiceover or narration that could be $100 to $200. And there are a number of very, very good selections that would be sub $100. And these will last a while if you take care of them. These are 25-year investments. They'll probably outlast most of us when it comes to time in the planetarium. And so audio is going to sound great, especially if you are doing something as simple as streaming Stellarium and you have your little videos in the corner. People can't see you all that well, but they're going to hear you the entire time. And the better the audio quality of our recordings, the more likely it is that our audiences will be able to stick around and listen to us, as opposed to it being sort of grainy or scratchy. The smoother and the better that it sounds, the more likely they are to stay tuned with us. And then Julieta, thanks Justin for doing that. I'm using a Rode USB mic. They're made in Australia. It's a wonderful, straightforward microphone that I originally purchased a couple of years ago to record lectures on, and now has become sort of my everyday workhorse microphone, and it works great. It sounds good and never ever drops out. It's one of the best things about the microphone. It works every single time. And then the last thing here in audio that we want to think on is headphones. Most of us are used to using the in-ear headphones, the earbuds and AirPods and things like that. If you're going to be sitting at a computer for a long period of time, over-ear headphones like the ones that I have here are going to be considerably more comfortable. They give you better sound quality. They use the headband to not, sit on your ears and weigh them down the whole time. But more importantly, it gives you isolation of sound so that not only can you hear how you sound, but you can also hear what's going on in the programs that you're using, allow you to hear other people when they're talking. And especially if you're in a place where there might be a little bit more external sound, if you're trying to interview someone, for example, having a better quality headphone means that you're going to get a lot more of the nuance of the other person's voice, rather than hoping you caught everything on your tinny little like $4 earbuds, which I've done as well. Of course, it's completely up to you, sort of what you're comfortable with. But you can spend $500 on a pair of headphones and they're going to sound great. You can spend $30 on a pair of headphones and they're going to probably last just as long and be about 95% of the sound quality. So no real recommendations. Just kind of go and see what looks nice or what reviews well. But for what I use, these are Sony's. And I'll put this in there. They're a very specific type of Sony. They're known as the MDR 7506, which is what you need to know is it's a 40-year-old earphone design. They were made specifically for musical recording in the early 70s, and they haven't changed it since. They're super comfortable, and they're really, really consistent in they work, they sound great. They're always a little bit under $100. Sometimes Sony will drop them down to about $50, and it's a steal. If you've listened to music before, listen to them with a good pair of headphones, and it's like rediscovering albums. And when you're on calls, the ability to really hear people like you're sitting in front of them makes a big difference. That kind of helps me a little bit with sort of the Zoom fatigue, is that I'm hearing people as pristinely as I can. So it does feel like there's a little bit more connection there. Amy Gallagher's got a question. Headphones with a mic attached. Kids use them for gaming. I think Scott Mitchell's got a pair on. Tim's got a pair on right now. Given the fact that you can spend $300 on a headset, many of the times the microphones are very, very good. They're designed to be able to pick up very loud noises, gamers that are yelling at each other, for example, but also provide you with very precise audio output, because you might be playing a game where it's not stereo, it might be surround sound, and the ability to pinpoint where your enemy is in your headphones could mean the difference between you winning that round and you losing that round. The only problem is that in most cases, headsets tend to be pretty bulky. You can find more refined looking headsets, ones that are a little bit sleeker, but they may not sound as good or have the same level of quality as the bigger, more substantial headsets. But if you have them available, it's certainly a good place to try, especially since the isolation between what you're hearing and the microphone means that you absolutely get no feedback. There's no chance of an echo because those two are isolated from one another. And instead of having multiple inputs and outputs, in some cases, it's usually just a USB cable that works for both. So now you have your sound and your microphone, one input into the computer, and you're done. So if you've got like a level of coolness where you can pull off massive headset, great. If you want to go a little more refined, Frank Kuziak says he uses Bluetooth earbuds occasionally. I know a few people have done that. And if you get the small enough ones, it looks like you're wearing nothing at all. That's pretty cool. Of course, your audio quality might not be as high, but you also don't have massive headphones on your head while you're giving a presentation. So really up to you on how you want to approach this. But really the key here is comfort. Like as long as they're comfortable and they sound good, it's a worthwhile investment. So any other questions before we move away from audio? Also, a wire, like if I get up, I will then pull the computer with me. So if they're wireless, then you can start moving around. Also better if you might be doing things with experiments. For example, if you're doing something live rather than streaming a program, then the ability to move around and not have something get in the way is that could be far more important than sort of the sound quality that you get. All right, so let's we're gonna flip our share now back to the PowerPoint. So audio, pretty straightforward. How do we make things sound? With video is how do we make things look? And this is really where you have the most room for improvement. Also the place where most of your money can go. Cameras, how do you capture video and how do you output it? In some cases, can you stream externally? Can you have a box that does the streaming for you so that you don't have to have software on your computer that does it? And then, of course, how do you support all the tripods and things like that? For most of what we do, a regular webcam, maybe the one that's integrated into your laptop, is going to be okay. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be limited on resolution. They are probably not going to have a lot of control over brightness and contrast and white balance, but it might be enough. It'll get by. If you go the route of an external webcam, where you might spend $100 or so. Then you, of course, have far more options available to you. Problem is that right now you don't have any options available to you because they're all completely sold out. So this is one of those, knock on wood, cross your fingers, hope that it gets to you at the time that you want it to. And in which case you have a pretty solid selection. The primary company when it comes to webcams has long been Logitech. They have produced webcams that are specifically for streaming and gaming, or at least they say that it's specific. It's no real difference from the other things. Their Brio webcam, this one here in the center of the page, is one of the first 4K webcams. And that means that everybody can see you as precisely as possible. 4K is a lot of stuff to output, and it is a lot of detail to be sharing your face with the world. So if you're not ready to do that, if you're not ready to output 4K video from your home, you can probably get by with something a little bit less than that. But there are the workhorses. Once they come back into stock, if you're looking for a webcam that's better than the one that's in your laptop, that won't break the bank, and that's going to look really, really good, without a doubt, it is, and I'll got one more person I got to let in, so there we go. Without a doubt, it is the C series from Logitech. So it's the C9XX. So in some cases, it's 22. We see the 30. The 30 was designed for conference rooms, and we can tell that because it has a wider field of view. It's meant to be at one end of the room and see as many people as possible. The 22 and its slightly cheaper cousin, the 20, both produce high definition video, and both cost less than $100. Up until about a week ago, let's see if I can show this here. This is one of the 920s. It's a little bit older, but I've used these Logitech cams for a while, and they are amazing. Easy to use, single USB connection. They have microphones on them if you're feeling lazy and you don't want any extra microphones. And it looks really, really nice. It's got a field of view that's going to be more than sufficient for anything that you want. And it's going to work with all of the major systems that you're going to run into, Zoom or OBS or any of those. If you can't find those, you at least want to find a webcam that has the ability to output at 1080. You want full high definition. That's sort of a future proofing thing. Anything less than that is just a very incremental step up from what you might already have on your computer. So if you're going to spend $60 to get 3% better, or $75 to double it, rather you wait and spend a little bit extra money and get something that really you'll see the difference of. So B&H, you can see almost everything except for the $250 HD webcam is out of stock and back ordered. I am currently using what is complete overkill for a webcam, but I got the camera and it works, so I might as well use it. I have a Canon DSLR camera that can connect to my computer with a USB cable, and Canon recently came out with a utility that allows me to use that camera as a webcam. And that means that I can change things like the depth of field, the ISO, the shutter speed, so that not only is it really sharp, but it works very well under low light, or it's something that's going to look really professional when I don't have a green screen behind me. So I think I've got enough space here. I'm going to see if this works. Well, bear with the possibility of things falling over and hitting me. But if I move, we'll get to the green screen later. There we go. So you can see behind me. So if we move that, you might be able to tell, especially if I stop the share, now things are big, that there is a blurriness to my background. And that comes from the lens of the camera. This isn't any sort of a filter that's applied. It's simply what you would do with a camera. So I can change things like the shutter speed, really blow it out. So now it's like a it's a hipster wedding video, I think is what somebody called this. You can change all of that and change so that I can make things very, very blurry in the back. And if I want a very specific look, I can dial that in. So now that I have a lot of depth of field, but it also means that as I'm moving back and forth, it's constantly refocusing, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I might set this a little bit lower so that I can see better. So there is a Canon utility that you can look into. I'll post the link for it. If you've got a relatively new Canon camera, you can use your DSLR as a webcam for the time being. So looking here, some good stuff. A lot of the Logitechs, everybody seems to be pretty happy with that. John, it's a 35 millimeter f1.8. So quite low on that. And then yes, cameras do need batteries. That's the thing. I've got an extended battery grip for this. I can get about 7 hours of use out of 2 batteries. If you are an astrophotographer, then there's a really good chance you have an AC adapter already for your DSLR, in which case you can plug it into the wall and keep that running. But unlike a webcam, which you plug in and forget, this can be a little bit more attention was going to be required to make sure that you're not running out of battery in the middle of a presentation. So for something like this, where I might want to have a better quality look, I can use the DSLR. And if I'm just having a regular meeting and it doesn't really matter, or it's just one of those days where you don't want everybody to see how your face looks in real life, then you use the other webcam and things are good. Oh, well, bless you. Noreen asks, can you use an old iPad as an external camera? And the answer is absolutely. iPads, iPhones, and Android phones are all very, very capable webcams. There are two pieces of software in particular that I'm going to point your attention to. Let's go and we're going to go back to the internet here. The first is what's known as Droid Cam. This is if you have an Android phone. And Droid Cam is what I used earlier to connect my camera on my cell phone to the computer. It does that because they're both on the same Wi-Fi network. And so it sets my phone as an internet camera that Zoom and other programs like OBS can read. Darren, I'll get back to that in just a second about the resolution. But what it means is that if, for example, I wanted to do a virtual star party, I could have my phone connected to the telescope out on the patio wirelessly and have it run into Zoom so that I can access that as an output. Or if I wanted to put it on my computer, on my monitor, I could access that as the camera and have control over focus and zoom and whether or not the LED light comes on from the computer itself. So Droid Cam, the best bet if you have an Android phone and a Windows computer. If you are a Mac user or you are one of those weird people who have an Android phone and an Apple computer, well, I don't know if I've met you yet, but you're out there. You might want to use what's known as Epoch Cam. It's by a company called Canoni. There is a free version that watermarks, and I believe it's $20 for the total version, which gives you full HD. And so if you've got one of the new iPhone 11s with the triple cameras, Epoch Cam can access all of the capabilities of the iPhone 11 cameras for your webcam. So if you want the depth of field, if you want the wide angle or the telephoto, this is a software that's going to allow you to access that on both Apple and Android. So Epoch Cam works on Android phones and Apple phones, but more importantly, can connect to Macs and Windows alike. Maybe even if some of you, I think there is a version of this in the works for Linux, So if you're a Linux user and you want to use your iPhone as a webcam, you can do so. So Epoch Cam is going to be your choice if you're an iPhone user, Droid Cam the best if you're an Android user, and both have very, very simple setups. And within a matter of minutes, you're able to connect your cell phone to your computer, either as an external camera or as a webcam, as long as your Wi-Fi works. Oh, and John, asking about how to use an Android phone as a webcam, but figuring out how to mount it, short of like gaff taping it to the back of your monitor. This is where 3D printing comes in very, very handy, especially if you have a monitor that is that's on a stand that isn't using its VESA mounts, its VESA mounts on the back. You can utilize a 3D printer to create attachments to the VESA mount that can then hold a phone above monitor level and allow you to essentially just kind of slide it into place and take it out once you're done using it as a webcam. So looking there, great. Yeah, and so this really is, if you want a wireless camera of good quality that you can use for other experiments or for moving around, Droid Cam or Epoch Cam, any of these sort of Wi-Fi enabling softwares really kind of open up your ability to move away from the desk and move sort of elsewhere in your studio or outside or elsewhere in the dome. So a real opportunity there. The other way of connecting with webcams and things like that is through what's known as an external capture card. And for this, I'm going to stop sharing because I can simply show you here with the video. External capture cards are these little guys here. So we'll see if it actually focuses. Ooh, lovely. So this is a capture card from a company called Elgato. And on one side, there's going to be some ports. You have an HDMI port in the middle, a USB-C port on what would be my left, and then an audio port if you want to input, and then an HDMI port on the other side. What this allows you to do is to take anything that can output HDMI, a computer, a camera, a camcorder, an Xbox or a PlayStation, a Switch, a Nintendo Switch, and connect it to your computer so that the computer sees it as a new input. This is kind of where this got started. These game capture cards allowed you to play your Xbox, and the computer could record it, and then it would keep going out to your TV so that people could watch you play while you played. And some people have made quite a bit of money from being from streaming games. Beyond that, people realized, well, then anything with an HDMI output works really, really well. It's what I used to use for the camera because of the new utility that Canon's made. All of the connection I have between SLR and the computer is USB only, no HDMI required. So if you were to connect someone else's computer into the capture card, route it to your computer, now you can access their screen and what they're outputting as if it was a webcam. There are limited uses for this. If you come across a need for a capture card, you will know it. I want to get someone's computer directly in. For those of you who are at an e-conference, probably about 2 weeks ago, we tried something fun where we went into Animal Crossing on Nintendo Switch and walked around and saw the space yard. That was done through the capture card. So the Switch was connected to this, and the output was sent to the computer. It read that as a webcam, and Zoom was able to output that for the e-conference. So it's one of those things where very, very powerful, but more than likely you're going to get what you need from all of the other inputs and outputs that you're going to use. This is a bit more specialized. And capture cards are expensive. This one, don't tell anybody it spits. I took home when we closed, and it'll go back as soon as we go. This is a $300 card. And most capture cards are going to be about that much money. There's a lot of processing power that goes on in these things. And real powerful, but $300 is a huge expenditure when in many other cases we can get by pretty easily without spending that kind of money. We'll share back the online just for the very, very quickly looking at external streaming. This is simply a topic that I'm bringing up in the off chance that one of you gets really, really good at this, to where someone in the room tonight, I don't know, I would keep going back to him, but I'm just going to use it. It's going to be Scott Mitchell. When Scott decides that he's not just a planetarian, but a full-on streamer, the computer's just not going to cut it anymore. And you're going to have so many inputs and so many outputs that the computer really doesn't need to be doing that level of processing power, that maybe all of the encoding, all of the streaming work can happen externally. And that's what we would get here in the streaming media switchers. These are simply outboard computers that collect all of the inputs and give you the ability to output things. These are digital video mixers, if you will. And you can see their prices can be a little high. This is a full investment for sites in which you might be streaming content every single day, and it's a primary component of your audience outreach. If this is something where you're doing 1 or 2 small online outreaches a week, you'd never ever need this level of capability. But this would kind of be an incomplete overview if we didn't go over stuff like this. So simply you have a number of HDMI sources, a number of computers, a number of capture devices that can be combined into one and then output on its own, where most of the work is being done in the box rather than in your computer. And that means that you can do more in your computer, things can be a little bit smoother, or you can work with less equipment. This is the ability, for example, the Sling Studio Hub, you could utilize without a computer at all. You could just have a series of cameras that connect to it and an Ethernet cable into the hub, and it'll output directly to the streaming services for you. So no computer necessary. You might have the ability to control it on an iPad or an Android tablet, but in some cases, this completely negates the need for a computer. This would be what you would want to utilize if you were a site that did a lot of remote streaming. You went to different events or you were out in the public a lot, where instead of bringing a complete computer setup, now you just got a hub, your cameras, and you're done. This is getting to the weekend broadcast news from anywhere in the world sort of technology. But even on the low end, $300 or $400, it's the ability to take all of this information, have this box do the work for you, and then output it to where you want it to go. So something to keep in mind if any of you get the itch to go and become a professional streamer someday. And then the last thing, this one is about as easy for planetarians and astronomers to figure out as any. Make sure you've got good tripods. Just make sure things are steady. You can clamp to anything, but almost all cameras, from the webcams to the DSLRs, have the same connections. In this case, it's usually the threaded 1/4-inch 20 post. If you're an astronomer, you've run into that 1,000 times. But you can put a webcam on top of a tripod, same way that you can put an SLR or a camcorder. And the steadier it is, the better. I don't know if I've got it here in the... Of course, I don't have it in the desk now, but you can get little tabletop tripods that hold your cell phone for you. And if all you wanted to do was to get on Facebook Live, hit record on your cell phone and start talking to people, having a tripod there to hold it for you so that you don't have any muffled sound and that everything is nice and steady really enhances the quality of the content that you're putting out there. So these little things, from tabletop tripods up to, tripods with pan and tilt, and you can move things around. All of that is people moving in the background now. All of that available. Just kind of go on ahead and kind of look at what your use cases are and go from there. You guys are fantastic in the chat. Just sending stuff that's way above and beyond anything. Gimbals. We're not going to talk about gimbals, except that a gimbal, you can put your cell phone on and then you can kind of move around and it keeps it all stabilized. It's really cool. And if you don't know how to use it, it's like having the phone fight you. So the first time you ever use a gimbal, it's a little odd, but the sort of production value and quality that it adds is quite amazing. It's really impressive how great we can create content today in ways that we couldn't do before. So now that we're done with video, any questions there before we move on? Very good. Oh, and if you see Frank in the gallery, he has the gimbal in his hand now. It's trying to keep the camera as steady as possible. Amy asks, how many ports do you have on your computer? Real ones, 3. Ones that, like, once you start adding hubs and ports and things, like 15. I don't use them all, but they're there if I need them. You can never have enough ports. It's really, it's the key to computing life. You can never have. Thank you. Look at that. My lovely assistant. That's a tabletop tripod. And that is a little clamp that holds onto your cell phone. So having one of these, very, very useful, and makes all of your cell phone productions all the more impressive. All right. So after that, we go to lighting. Lighting's a little bit simpler. You've got some basics here. You've got your main light, which in this case would be your key light. It's the one that does the main illumination on your face. For me, that's going to be a ring light. Some of you may have already seen in the group chat, some $20, $25 ring lights from Amazon. They're great. So what you can see here, I've got a ring light right in front of me, and I can increase the brightness. I get really bright, and also change the color temperature. So I might have something that's sort of a mix between daylight and bright, just the white light, something that's a little bit more yellow, and then of course there in the middle. For those of you who have been in a bathroom or you've used a vanity with a ring light while putting on makeup or shaving or things, you know how much better it makes you look, but also how much more detail you see when you have very uniform lighting across your face. So having a ring light is probably the #1 way of making yourself look better on webcam, is simply having one consistent light at your face that you can control the brightness of. If you're in a situation where we have more need for lighting, maybe you need a lighting kit, that's when things get slightly more complicated. So what we'll do is jump on over back to the internet. Take a look at some lighting kits. And again, these, you can spend a lot of money. And when I mean a lot of money, I mean thousands of dollars on lighting. Or you can see that maybe all you're ever going to do is work on a tabletop and you need 2 bright lights to fill in some of the shadows, and you want to spend $40, and that's it. Perfect. Great. Now you've got lighting that can fill in shadows that allows you to take some really professional looking photos. And if this is too expensive for your blood, really any light can be repurposed, especially if you can diffuse the light. The biggest problem is you have a direct light source in your face, and it's giving you a hot spot, one area where that light is concentrated. When you diffuse the light, looks so much better. Mike Francis, cake pan light, it is an excellent project for planetarians. We're used to working with light. This is probably going to be the component of home studio that we all kind of instinctively get. You just want to look good, and the lighting allows you to do that. You fill in the parts that might be a little bit darker. You make sure that you don't have any direct lights in your face, and you're going to be in great shape. But what everybody seems to get excited about is maybe there's an opportunity to get really, really professional with your pictures, with your videos, and you want to get into the use of backgrounds. So what I have behind me here, oh, what's really far away? So this is a green screen that is also a blue screen on the other side, and it is collapsible. Don't ask me why I have a green screen, just things that you accumulate over time. But this cost me about $40 originally. It kind of folds down into a 20-inch circle, and then it has a stand that was about $15 that holds it behind me. And that green screen is great for Zoom because you can put on the nice virtual backgrounds and it looks really professional. But more importantly, when you're using things like OBS, where instead of just looking for a green screen, it's looking at the green as a transparency. You can then be in front of things. Like if you want to put Stellarium behind you on the green screen, you can do so. If you want to, sit on the rings of Saturn in Digistar or OpenSpace or something like that, you can do so with the green screen because simply you're telling the software, use this transparent area to showcase some sort of source. And that's where the green screens become very, very powerful. It's the reason, of course, why why it's the basis for meteorology. And if you're the weatherman, you stand in front of the green screen, the information is in front of you, and as long as you can see what's being overlaid in the computer, then you can point it out. And here we have the cold front pushing down through the Appalachians, and you have the ability to add that that interaction, that level of interaction to your videos. Here's the thing. A $40 collapsible green screen is great. And for an apartment where I'm not going to drill into the ceiling, it's perfect. As long as it's green or blue, really, but more than likely you're going to wear blue at some point. As long as it is a consistent shade of green and is thick enough to not allow a lot of light through, it can be anything you want. It can be poster board, it could be construction paper taped together, it could be a green bed sheet. It doesn't matter. As long as it's green and uniform, you can use it as a backdrop. So I think Jeff Holt, you've got what looks to be green sheet. Green sheet. So if we were to use that in most streaming software, be able to pick that up in an instant and then know that that green needs to be replaced and is now transparent. So any source that you would put behind Jeff would be visible. Amazon really does have everything, Amy. It's the most amazing part. And yes, if you can get enough green poster board to make yourself a green screen, do so. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that you have to be very, very careful because now you have 19 poster boards that you're moving around the house, and then how to make sure that that's being suspended correctly. Justin asks, any tips to light it effectively? As long as it looks mostly uniform. It doesn't have to be perfectly uniform. One of the nice things about fabric in general is that it will diffuse light. And it's unlikely that we're going to have a hot spot on cotton or polyester, which would be the two most likely materials that they're going to make the green screens out of. So as long as you have generally even lighting, you're going to be okay with lighting a green screen, poster board, sheet, whatever. Nice and uniform behind you, and now all of a sudden you have a backdrop that you can utilize in a lot of ways. So that's backgrounds in lighting. Any questions before we move on? Good, we're getting close to the end. Turn that over. And then, of course, the last thing has to do with streaming. This is really where most of you are familiar with a lot of what we're going to be talking about here. These are all of the locations where we can stream out to, whether it's Facebook Live or YouTube. There's Instagram, which generally is something that you're going to stream to directly from a phone or tablet and not from a computer. So what you might stream on Instagram is likely to be very, very different from what you're going to stream on YouTube. YouTube, you could stream something for hours and hours. On Instagram, you might stream something that might only be a few seconds, or a couple of seconds, 30 or 40 seconds. For the sort of the origination of streaming games, we have Twitch, which is a site devoted to nothing but streaming. It's a little bit more, if you took part in the e-conference yesterday, May 13th, on social media best practices, Twitch is not a place where you're going to find the widest variety of demographics. But if you're looking for a very specific group of people, people who really like streaming, Twitch tends to be the place to go. And it's a site that's very, very easy to use with streaming software. If you're willing to spend the money, Vimeo Live is, I think, like $80 a month if you have to be on Vimeo. But then you have tools like Caster and StreamYard, which can take your output from Zoom or OBS and send it to multiple locations. So maybe you want to send it to Facebook and to YouTube and to Twitter or Periscope or something. You can do all of that from a single location. And then, of course, the newer streaming sites like TikTok, which we're not going to get into. It's for the youngins. And then, of course, there's the really easy way of doing it, which is to not stream at all. And that's to record and refine and edit and then upload to the sites. What you lose in interaction, you're likely to gain in production value. And then you can kind of figure out what's most important for you. The content creation is likely to be the same, but the means by which you achieve your final goal, whether I want really, really high quality productions, in which case you'd want to record and upload later, or I want the ability to interact with my audiences, in which live streaming is more important. That's more of a facility by facility decision, how you want to move forward with that. And whether or not we do really great recorded content, but we like to do more interactive. That's of course going to push you to using one platform or the other. All right, looking, Carol, my glasses reflect heavily. How can the lighting help? I need these glasses to see my keyboard. Part of it is once you were able to diffuse light enough, a ring light in front of you can be an issue. But in some cases, you can have ring lights that are diffuse enough on the sides so that they can be placed at an angle where they won't reflect directly off of your glasses to the camera, but still illuminate around you enough that you can easily see the keyboard and access that and have access to everything else around you, but not have the reflectance straight from your glasses. The other possibility there is an illuminated keyboard, which have come down in price quite a bit. I think like the cheapest illuminated keyboard I've seen now is $20. And that can be bright enough to be seen even with direct lighting elsewhere around you. Jason, Twitch does more than yes, it's more than a gaming streaming website now. There are a couple of planetarians actually who are on Twitch who utilize Twitch quite a bit. Is Jackie in here? Good. I can give Jackie Bauman a plug here. Jackie Bauman from Buffalo does live painting on Twitch. Mike George, who's with Evans and Sutherland, does a podcast every Sunday that they stream live on Twitch. So it's a real opportunity to connect with like-minded people in a very straightforward way. Do we have any advice on diffusing a light cheaply? Paper towels are one of the ways to do that. For photography, one of the things to diffuse a flash was to take a used like rubbing alcohol bottle, cut the top off, and usually that was right about the same size as a Canon or a Nikon flash unit. And the plastic, because it was translucent but not transparent, would diffuse the light enough to utilize that and spread the light over a wider area. Anything that is translucent but not transparent, so it lets light through, but you can't really see on the other side details, is going to be a useful diffuser. Parchment paper, paper towels, particularly thin sheets. And then in some cases, you could take a sheet and fold it, and now you have sort of double the thickness, and that can affect the diffusion as well. It's true, KY jelly does diffuse light, but you may not want to rub KY jelly all over your ring light. Again, it's up to you. No judgment. Jason, I think that's been known for a while. I don't think we have to go into any deeper detail of how somebody would find that out. And then the other thing is, anytime you bounce a light, anytime you reflect a light, you will be diffusing it. So simply turning a light around in some cases could be enough to diffuse the light back to you in a way that's appealing. All right, so that is that's the conclusion of sort of the main topics tonight. We ran just a little bit over, but it's okay. There was a lot to cover. Any questions about maybe things we didn't cover, something specific that you might want to ask here, and be able to get that out before we wrap up and get ready for Hospitality Suite? Right. Well, if not, you know where to find me. Feel free, streaming your position. Kat, I will. Okay. All right, fine. I will go sit in Stellarium. This is how I will showcase that. Instead of though having to put this entire thing behind me, we are going to, Paula, can you help me? Yeah. All right. We're just going to move this somewhat closer so you can see it. And now we're going to open OBS, and I got to see if any of this is going to work. Thanks, Kat, for putting me on the spot. I enjoy this. This is what we do. So we're going to go and open up Stellarium. And by the way, if you don't know, Stellarium is an amazing app that showcases the night sky, and I think you all should use it. So until then, so Stellarium, let's see you pop up. There it is. Let's put it on a screen that we can use. All right. All right. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to go dark for, stop that share. I'm going to go dark for about 10 seconds because I can't have two things accessing the camera at the same time, though you will still be able to hear me. So let's see. I want a new capture device. Yes. Okay. So I'm adding a capture device. And it likes me. Is it going to find me? Maybe. No, it's not going to find me. Doesn't matter. We're still going to fix this. Oh, you know, one of the crazy things is that I have another webcam that's literally sitting here that I can just plug in anytime I want. So we're gonna show how this works for Kat, because it really is quite cool when you're floating out in the vastness of space all by yourself. So got my little camera. Boom. Okay. Love it when we do it live. There we go. Okay, great. I'm going to tell it custom. Okay, so now I'm outputting, and that means if I share my video, there it is. All right, so this is another camera, and now you can see the green screen behind me. So I'm going to add a filter to this, to my capture device that states that anything that's green needs to be seen as transparent. So I filtered it. All right, you can now see that everything now behind me is black. That means that any source that I put behind me will be visible behind me. And I will choose a window. That window is Stellarium. And of course, Stellarium's got to be weird. Doesn't matter, brute force. Okay, so there's Stellarium behind me. And if this was just a regular Zoom, I'd be off to the side and you wouldn't be able to see me, except now I can, I'm now in front of Stellarium. Whoa. So now I can go to Saturn, for example. And it would look better if I took the time to actually do this. So go to Saturn, turn the ground off. Whoa, am I on Saturn? Okay. Wow, what's going on here? No, that's weird. I broke Stellarium. It's ridiculous. Okay. All right. In this case, I'm just going to click Jupiter. And I'm going to zoom in. There we go. Oh, much better, much better. So now Jupiter is behind me. You can't really see it all that well. Come back. There it is. No. All right. So now I'm in front of Jupiter, but I also have the ability to, with my filter in place, I can dissolve into Jupiter. So now I am the king of the planets, because the green screen behind me allows me to take the source, put it behind me, and now all of the fun Photoshop layer stuff that OBS allows me to do gives me the ability to overlay myself. So now I can talk as if I was Jupiter, or like this would probably, Joanne would love this. I could get like a big red star behind me and I could be Big Daddy, or like I could be the little star, and then you could go crazy. Like you could reinterpret little star if you wanted to. I don't know if you want to, but you can now, because now you can be floating in space as Jupiter. So Kat, I hope that that answers your question as to what you can do there. And now you can now be part of space. So very exciting. All right, so back to the webcam. Eventually, things are slow. It's all right. There we go. And so that's no triggering with little star. Sorry, John, I apologize. I should have had a little star warning there at the beginning. So that brings essentially our streaming essentials for home studio, whatever we're calling this, to an end. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And then if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. We'll make sure that all of the links, PowerPoint, everything will be available by at least sometime tomorrow. And then in like 15 minutes, hope to see you guys at the hospitality suite. It's going to be a good time. So until then, take care. And because we can, everybody gets to be unmuted. So
Let's try to finish this one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Mike. Rock and roll.
Now I have this
Thank
whole
you.
big studio. Yay.